All right, so this week and next we're going to talk about non-destructive testing. So we'll see how it goes. Good chance that we'll just have a test next Wednesday, Thursday? What's the last day?
Thursday.
All right.
19th?
Something like that.
Down to a T, wouldn't you?
All right.
Just a day.
It's not moving. There we go.
Okay.
All right, I'll circle back around this perhaps. But the big question everybody's asking is, how do we get certified? Okay, you don't. Through a school. There's certification and qualification, all right? And one thing you have to understand is that you have to go to school to get a proper number of hours of education, and then out in the field, and it's very specific, this cannot be hours in a classroom, you have to get X number of hours in the field to get your certification. So you can qualify, just like, okay, you're going to school, right? And for some of you, at the end of 2 years, and you pass your test, are you qualified to be an A&P?
No. Yes. You're certified.
You qualified.
You're going to take a test.
Are you qualified to take the test?
Yeah.
Okay, but are you certified?
No.
No. So you finish all your tests and everything, then you are now certified. Okay, so you get there's qualified and certified. So qualified is one thing, certified is something completely different. So you can look at this chart right here and you can see what you would have to get. So level 1 is the lowest you can be, and that is you know how to turn on the machine, do some process controls, and work under the direct supervision of a level 2. Then there's a level 3. A level 3 is often not even on site. When I was in the field, our level 3 would come around once every quarter, right? And we just come in and go, okay, I just need to see what you're up to, how you doing it, any questions, you're doing it right. Let me see your instructions. Okay, everything looks good. See you in a couple weeks. See you in a month. Call if you have any problems. Goodbye. And level 2 just handles everything. But if you're level 1, the level 2 pretty much has to stand over you and watch you do everything. So for me, a level 1 would like get the machine warmed up. That was it. I didn't trust anybody doing anything else. So all right. So for classroom, what does that look wrong to me? According to this, you need 16 hours PT, 16 hours. PT is a penetrant. Magnetic particle. You need 40 hours for eddy current and 40 hours for ultrasound. That's just basic classroom hours to not really even understand much. That's 40 hours. Plus you need experience, 130 hours plus 8 and 400. So each one is completely and totally separate. You can't combine them. You can't say, well, I did 8 hours here and 8 hours here. That's 16. I just move it to 1. It doesn't work that way.
Are you a level 2 in all 4?
Okay, so no, not at all. I was a level 2 in PT and MT. Now, who certifies you? This gets, and again, I'll come back around it. It's very confusing for a lot of people because there is a central certification ASNT will do.
Why is X-ray?
Where is X-ray? It's the same place as, this is where it's going to be today. It's the same place as radiographic. It's the same place as neutron radiographic, thermal imaging, acoustic imaging, leak testing, and visual. Not on the slide. That's where it is. So why you picked that specific one to ask about, I don't know. But it's not on the slide, obviously.
I thought it's pretty common.
It is, but I can only cover so much material in such a given time. But now that you've wasted that much time, it probably would have been faster if I would have just told you, wouldn't it? I don't know. I don't have the hours in front of me. Look it up. All right. Now that you derailed me on that one, where were we?
I forgot.
Okay, so it's certainly not the FAA. Okay, so qualification. There is a central certification, ASNT, who will do central certification. And my understanding is they really just started doing this. And for the most part, it's really geared towards oil and gas industry. You're going to find that most all of NDT stuff tends to be geared towards that. This has been my experience. You go to school for it and they want to talk oil and gas, pipeline. You're like, wait a minute, I'm doing a crankshaft on an engine. Like, why would you do that? So they don't understand sometimes. So it's rare that you get people who do understand aerospace. Okay, so there is central certification, and they do have it now for level 2. but they didn't always. So the more common method is that the employer follows the certification procedures and does an in-house certification. So you go work for an employer, they look at your classroom hours, they're going to give you a test, they're going to verify that you know what you're doing, they're going to issue you level 2 or level 1. And then that's what you're going to have. You quit that company, go to somebody else, you don't have it anymore because it was the employer who certified you.
What is a school like this, would it run to go to a class for actual NDT?
Okay, but it doesn't count.
Correct, I know, but just to get the classroom hours.
I think 2 years ago, I got the 32 and 32, and I paid $4,000 for each one.
Wow. That'll take you to Disneyland.
Yeah.
Twice.
All right. What else I got here?
With the classroom hours travel with you, right? Not the-
Yes. You see, classroom. That's your education. You've done it. But and so does your experience level. So if you go work for an employer and you get all this experience, and sure you're certified through them. You go to work for somebody else. You keep track of this stuff, and you walk in, and here's my certification hours. Here's the hours that I was working for them, and that employer will just give you their test and say, okay, you're level 2 here now. So it's really not that big of a deal. All right, where do we want to start here? Let's start with this. So NDT, which stands for non-destructive testing. Non-destructive, that's one word. Non-destructive testing can also be called NDE, or non-destructive examination or evaluation. Non-destructive examination or evaluation. Or NDI. Thinking ahead here. NDI. What does non-NDI mean? Inspection. So as the name implies, it is non-destructive, meaning
You don't get a break.
you don't break it. If you broke it, you did destructive testing. Well, yep, that part would have been good. Next. It's like the old Bugs Bunny cartoon where he was assigned to test bombs. Had a little hammer. You hit the end of the bomb and write dud on it. All right. Methods. There are a lot of non-destructive. These are the 10 major. So 10 major and most recognized. Major. All right, let's see. If I go 1 through 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're going to tell me what they are. Magnaflux.
That covers it.
All right, that one came out as, I don't know, it's just number 3 on my notes. Doesn't mean it's the third most popular. MT, or Magnaflux, which is not called Magnaflux at all because Magnaflux is a trade name. That is like calling every car a Hyundai. Just,
Worse than what you call them.
I like
No,
Hyundais.
sorry, Ford's worse than that.
Mercedes.
I'm actually surprised you didn't stick with Mercedes, Kevin. Let's see where you're.
Mercedes don't make glass.
All right, we got MT, magnetic particle, which I will often call Magnaflux. Sorry, it's not appropriate, but that's the way it's going to be. What else? Dye penetrant, also called liquid penetrant.
That's what I was thinking.
I doubt you were thinking that. Probably not. Anyway, probably don't want to know what you're thinking.
Eddy current.
Eddy current,
That's why the boy under did.
also called, I don't know why I just don't. I'll lose track if I don't. 5, 6, 6. ET. electromagnetic testing, also called eddy current, EDD, named after
Eddy current.
Dr. Freddie Current. All right.
Ultrasound.
Are you going to get them all?
Those are about the four that I really
UT, ultrasound. All right. Got a lot more here.
Visual inspection.
Ah, visual. VT. Visual. So there's a whole world of visual testing. How to do it right with the flashlight, making sure you have the right light. It's not just looking at it. All right, what else we got?
X-ray,
What?
radioactive.
Radio, okay. RT. Radiographic testing. Wow, we got the top 6. And RT. Ivan knows this one. Neutron radiographic testing. 8. TIR. Yep, thermal. Thermal / infrared. Infrared. Number 9, AE. Acoustic emission. And LT. Leak testing. All right, so in every one of these you can, and there's more, you can be a level 1, level 2, level 3, and each one, of course, can have its own hours and requirements. But I need to scroll. So how far down are you, Janet?
I'm on number 10.
10. Woo! All right, I can go way up there like that. Okay. You're on number 8.
Well, erase them all. Those not don't
All right, non-destructive testing. Non-destructive testing qualification. Oops, that's Q. Qualification and certification. All right, my soapbox. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can does not mean you should. Aviation is a very macho business, and people are often afraid to admit when they can't do something or shouldn't do something. And so in my experience, welding and non-destructive testing fall into like the most widely you shouldn't touch it things where people do stuff. I don't know why that is. Welding, people shouldn't be welding, but I've seen welds come in going, wow, that's bad weld. You shouldn't have done that. And NDT, I've had a lot of people do NDT, and they shouldn't have done NDT. They had no idea what they were doing, didn't do process control, didn't use the right stuff. Bad. I think I've told most of you guys, you know, even people that were great mechanics, a lot of the times, I say some of the, unless you're doing NDT and that's your job, you may be called upon periodically to do an NDT check. And it's funny, and as an instructor, I even have people, after this statement, I will still have students call, hey, guess what? I'm glad we learned NDT. I just did, an inspection on a carry-through spar. Okay, carry-through spar is a big deal. Yeah, well, what'd you do? Well, I wish I would have remembered not to put so much red dye on. So you're using red dye on a carry-through spar. It's like, all right, some of you know what that means. There's no sensitivity level to red dye. It's like, okay, and you have an airworthiness directive. I haven't read it, but I'm willing to bet this airworthiness directive does not say that you're supposed to use the wrong product. This is a very critical thing, and so I've got that. I've got a situation right now where somebody just sent some parts to me and said, "Hey, could you take a look at these and do some NDT?" Well, send me what I'm supposed to do. And I looked at it. I'm like, okay, this is not something that we can, that I can do. I don't have they didn't send the materials. It's, they're just like, well, just put it in some dye and, just do your thing. And it doesn't work that way, right?
Just 2 years.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, this calls for, this type of process. Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm telling you it does. So, gosh, I had one time I walked by a cylinder. The guy was working on an engine. I was doing an annual or something. I just walked by the engine. I'm like, hey, the cylinders are cracked. You know that, right? He's like, no, they're not. I'm like, yeah, they're cracked. You can see them. When I walk by, I can see they're cracked. And I said, dye pen them out. You'll see. And an hour later, I walked by and, he said, they're not cracked, and I'm like, yeah, they're totally cracked. I can see the crack from here. And I showed him, and he said, but I dye penned it, and there's no cracks. I said, well, let me see your dye pen procedure. And he just puts the dye pen on, then he waits a few minutes, and he takes a can of solvent and just sprays it in there and just holds it in there until all the solvent washes out and all the red dye washed out. Then he puts some developer. I said, see, there's no dye. I'm like, yeah, because the dye is on the floor, So, okay, just because you can does not mean you should. NDT is actually a very complicated process, and you do it just a little bit wrong, and you're going to get very wrong answers. Make sure you have the right equipment. Instructions and training. I'll just leave it at that. That's good enough. And you're going to see there's a lot of variances in NDT. For example, that part that somebody asked me to do, and I said, well, send over the instructions. Let me take a look at it. They sent over service bulletin, and it had the exact product that was supposed to be used on this testing. Never mind the parts weren't cleaned and they're in no condition were they ready to be tested. But they sent over the service bulletin. The service bulletin had the exact products that it said, but it said or equivalent, right? So that means that in order for me to vary from that or equivalent, I have to know what those products are and what the equivalent is. So I didn't have all the paperwork, but I knew enough about that product to know I don't have the equivalent. That's a completely different process with a different sensitivity level. And then it said, and in accordance with, and it gave a mil-spec number. I don't have the mil-spec number. So I need to look up the mil-spec number, and in the mil-spec, it's probably going to have a lot of things going on. What level certification I need, what type of lights I need to have, how often the lights have to be tested, on and on and on, and how old the product can be. So you can't just jump in and do it, just because even if you know the right product. So what is qualified? Qualified. This is kind of an ASTM sort of way of stating it. It's written testimony of qualification. And that doesn't really help, does it? But that is the paperwork that proves you have the necessary classroom and experience. I'll say classroom training. Training and experience. Can you get the experience in a classroom?
No.
Nope. That's on the job. So certification. That is a certifying agency And who is usually the certifying agency?
Employer.
Your employer is a certifying agency under most circumstances. Has issued a certificate. Has issued certificate. Okay, so who are the certifying agencies? Certifying agencies. All right. Most likely who?
Employer.
Okay, the employer. And the employer can't just, I can't just open up a Kevin's aircraft repair and then say, well, it's my shop, so I'm going to now deem myself a level 2. Okay, it doesn't work that way, because in order for me to say I'm level 2, then I got to say level 2 what? Who says level 2? Then I got to go, okay, well, that's, ASTM or one of the certifying documents, NAS 410, and then NAS 410 and these other documents lay out, okay, as employer, this is what you must do to have an in-house NDT program to certify people, so I got to follow that. So you have to follow all of those rules. It can be a central cert through ASNT, American Society for Non-Destructive Testing. Yeah.
So if you get your certificate from the ASNT,
Uh-huh.
can that transfer from employer to employer unlike the
Mhm.
other one?
I sure can. But there's the catch. Does the employer have in their op specs that they can accept an ASNT central certification? Maybe they don't, so they have to issue one anyway. But you still have your card in your pocket.
It's all a word game.
A word game?
Yeah, it's just how things are worded.
Yeah, kind of.
They just do it for liability?
No, it's just the way it is.
How open are level 3?
What's that?
How did you get a level 3?
I think you actually go central through ASNT to get your level 3. So level 3s, I believe, are all central certs. So the employer doesn't do level 3. Employer does 1 and 2.
They have to
I
hire
think. I'm not completely certain on that, but I believe that's the way it is.
But you keep it then, right?
Yeah, but it's hard to get, and it's,
In the Navy, I know, like, you go to ABI in Pensacola.
yeah.
When you get, it's like 8 weeks out there or something, and then you come back and you do all your OJT, and then you get a level 3. Like, I had some of my sergeants in my shop because they had to do eddy current on the blades.
Okay,
So, but they all
Through the Navy?
Yeah.
but I think they might have taken the central test.
I mean, I know they went to Pensacola.
Okay.
They got sent out there. And
But yeah,
I
but
don't know if it's.
I think it's I'm not 100% on this one, because I don't have a level 3. I was looking into it, and I had to go through ASNT to get it, so that's kind of why I'm saying, But yeah, boy, let me tell you right now, these tests are not geared towards aerospace at all. Even when I went to for training for level 2, it was some of the hardest tests. They were insanely difficult.
Just
And-
because you weren't a part of that.
No,
field?
I got the best score in the class.
Oh.
But man, there were people who everybody in my class had been doing it for at least 5 years. There was nobody in there who was new. We were all very experienced people, and there were some of them very interesting people. They worked in. One guy did gun barrels for Marines. It's all different sized gun barrels, tanks, rifles, the whole thing. And another girl did something else in aerospace. I forget what it was. So she was completely aerospace. It was an NAS 410 class. It was all aerospace based. And they were freaked out. They were freaked. They were going to lose their job. And this was like their second or third cert. They were just like, man, we were going to, because if they didn't pass, they had no job to go back to. They were freaked out. I mean, one girl, she was just damn near panicking. It was a hard test.
Doesn't sound like something I want to get into.
It wasn't that bad. I think maybe it was the teacher made it harder than it had to be. You know? So, all right. So we certifying. All right. So what is your certification through? So I threw out some of these things. So certification, I'm just going to abbreviate CERT, which just makes it worse for Janet, who's writing out certification.
Sorry.
I'll write it out. CRTIFICT. Certification. There, I did it too. Is in accordance with, and by the way, in aviation, You see this a lot, IAW, in accordance with one, scroll up, of the following. All right, so, and I don't know why it is, people in NDT, it's like some sort of thing. You have to say this as fast as you can. You can't say it slowly. So it's SNTTC1A. Could you slow down and say that again? No, it's SNTTC1A. It's SNTTC1A. And that is through ASNT. That's the Society for NDT. And that's the basis for all certs, all other. So that is something that's quoted just about everything. There's NAS 410, which is formerly MIL standard, so MIL standard 410. This is for aerospace. So when I went to do my recertification, they had two classes offered. One was the standard class. I think it was, I forget what they called it. But then there was the NAS 410 class, which was a little bit more expensive. And somebody was kind enough to actually tell the difference between the two classes. For aerospace, you need extra time. It was an extra 8 hours, I think. They said it's the same class, they just talk slower. Exact same information. You just have to be there longer. I'm like, yeah, that was wonderful. CP 189. 189 CP. That is ASNT and oil and gas. Oil and gas. We have ISO 9712. International, that's for international. ISO is International Standard, International Organization for Standards. ACCP, which is the ASNT Central Cert. And AWS, NDE, American Welding Society Non-Destructive Testing. What?
Let's get on the test.
He said, I hope all this isn't on the test.
Okay, if anything's on the test, I would ask you which one of these applies to us. NAS 410. But I want you to know that there's all of this going on. So there's a level of complexity that we don't want to get too carried away with, right? So I'm going to kind of stick with NAS 410 stuff here. With the hours, that's where I'm getting it. Right there, right here. Aviation typically follows NAS 410. All right, then we have our levels. We'll just talk about level 1, how we do that. Level 1. Level 1. Oh, I'm sorry. They do want to do it that way. Levels. And then we'll do this. Level 1. Level I. I'm not going to write all this. An individual should be qualified to properly perform specific calibrations, specific NDT, and specific evaluations for acceptance or rejection determinations according to written instructions and to record results. NDT Level 1 should receive the necessary instruction supervision from a certified NDT Level 2 or 3 individual. So we can write this is the lowest level. Lowest level works under direct supervision of a level 2 or 3. What does direct supervision mean?
They're breathing in your ear.
That's pretty good right there. They are breathing in your ear. They are eyesight away. They are not off-site. They are right there, verifying everything.
would a level 3 be like somebody that the company you work for hired just for that
Mhm.
task?
Yep. Okay, a level 2 should be qualified to set up, calibrate equipment, and interpret and evaluate results with respect to applicable codes, standards, and specifications. Level 2 should be thoroughly familiar with the scope and limitations of the methods for which she is qualified and should exercise assigned responsibility for on-the-job training and guidance of trainees and NDT Level 1 personnel. The NDT Level 2 should be able to organize and report the results of NDT tests. So, which is to say that the Level 2 does almost everything but make up procedures. So Level 2 follows procedures, but you have the capability to read and follow exactly what was written without help from a Level 3. So if you're given a report or a standard, you have to be able to read that standard, follow it, and train people below you, the Level 1s, to follow that standard. And then a Level 3 writes standards. So we talk about testing engines or crankshafts or stuff like that, and I'm telling you guys how to do it. I didn't come up with that on my own. It wasn't me doing trial and error or just somebody standing next to me and go, well, this is the guy before me said to do it. This is actually comes down from a Level 3 who worked for the engine manufacturers, who wrote the specs, who went in the engine books or service bulletins instructions that I read and then followed. So, but a Level 3 actually writes the material and how to do it. So if somebody came into your NDT shop and said, okay, you know, I've got this big part here, this new coffee cup, and I need this tested, I would have to go to a Level 3 and say, we have this new part, you know, here's, how do you want us to be testing this? And I want to do, you know, liquid penetrant inspection, and then the Level 3 would work it out. Okay, well, what kind of cracks are we looking for? We're looking for fine cracks. We're looking for almost visible to the eye anyway. Is this aerospace? Is it a critical part? How many cracks can we have? We have stress cracks, checking, or you know, tooling marks. You should go over all that and then decide on the method, how many I'm going to do a week, and all that, and come up with the process.
So the manufacturers don't really do that?
Yeah, they do.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm saying that's where, like, when I did it, it was written more in service bulletins instructions, service instructions. It would tell you how to do it. Sometimes I would have airworthiness directives that would tell you how to do it. So the airworthiness directive would have spelled out, you use this product and you're supposed to do it. Well, they would say, use this product and do it in accordance with this ASTM. So you have to go to the ASTM, the standard, and then read it and do it exactly as it says. So what can we put here? Level 2.
Read, write, and understand the English language.
Yeah. All right, that's our Level 2. Let me see.
The neck breather.
Supervises Level 1 and takes orders from Level 2. 3. Takes orders from Level 3. There we go. And then Level 3. Well, I got like half a page written here. This is Level 3. Individuals should be capable of developing, qualifying, and approving procedures, establishing and approving techniques, interpreting codes, standard specifications, and procedures, as well as designing the particular methods, techniques, and practices to be used. And I go on from there. So, writes the procedure. There we go. Writes and approves the procedures.
And you said there has to be a written and approved procedure for each individual part?
Mm-hmm. It's not that difficult. You know, if you take an entire engine, it used to the service bowl and say, well, you're supposed to do this using AC circular and longitudinal magnetization at 1,000 amps per square inch. Crankshaft should be done at this. Conrods at this. Just a one-line statement. It doesn't have to be that big of a deal. And then just, you know, and in accordance with an ASTM, and then that throws everything else in. All right, so this is NAS 410 hours. And that was a slide I just showed you. So for PT, level 1, you need how many classroom hours? Plus experience. Let's see.
130?
Classroom and experience. 130, very good. And for MT, same thing, 16 and 130. All right, so I'm trying to get you as close as I can to these numbers here. For ET,
That was the guy from the movie, right?
that was the guy from the, no, it's, never mind. It is 40 and 400, and UT is 40 and 400. All right, let's take a break there. We'll talk about employer certification when we return.